But as times changed and margins got squeezed from 600 to 500 to 400, and then these corporations were like, they weren't meeting their end of the year annual profit targets. The Vietnam price is 10 to 30% higher than China. And most people are shocked when they come here.
Well, my name is Mike, and I run Kilo NYC and Kilo Tactical, which is sort of its tactical-inspired subdivision.
You know, in a perfect ideal world where both sides are open, the factory has their target profit margin per garment, and then the brand has their target profit margin. And let's just say like Nike, factories that produce for Nike, I personally believe are making like 5% margin, but they've got massive volume, it's constant, and Nike just has that kind of leverage. But then like an outerwear factory that's making for the top brands around the world that can do as low as 1,000 pieces per style, their profit margin might be as high as 20%. So the range is like from 5 to 20% for a factory that's just making stuff. Now a brand, on the other hand, if you're doing wholesale, the margin could be 200% if you're selling into like Walmart or something. But like, you know, like a Palace or a Supreme, you know, a really well-known brand that's established, they might make as much as 600%. So, you know, if everybody's open, and if it's an open costing as well as an open margin, you could, in theory, just sit down with the factory and first establish, okay, the factory says we need to make 15%, or else we don't want to work with you. And you say, well, I need to make, you know, 450%. And then you work backwards from there. Because then really it just comes down to all the individual costs on the BOM, the zippers, the poly bags, the fabric, the thread, right? And all of that's like very transparent. And you've got options. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a company called Coats, which makes like super high-tech thread. You know, thread that has antimicrobial properties or stretch properties, you know? So like just the thread itself, there's a price variation anywhere from as low as, you know, 5 cents per meter up to $1 per meter in the thread. But once you establish the cost of the raw materials and the profit margins for the factory and the profit margins for the brand, then you got the labor cost, right, which is more difficult because not everybody's getting paid the same thing, and you've got your direct labor and your indirect labor. So it depends on the factory. You know, what's the ratio of sewers to admin staff, and that calculation is a challenging one. And then the other one is overhead. You know, like for one garment, you take the cost of electricity, the electricity bill for 1 month, and you divide it by the number of garments that the factory produces per month, and then that becomes the electricity cost, the overhead electricity cost per garment. You know, so you could go into that extreme detail. Water, you know, like the water bill, electricity bill, money that they have to pay to the local government as part of just like taxes. You know what I mean? So that's where the gray is. But at the end of the day, it's just a spreadsheet, and everything has a cost. And some factories are better than others at breaking that down. But I would say that is one of China's strengths and Vietnam's weaknesses. China has been put to the test ever since the 1970s by all the major brands, sports brands, fashion brands. You know, for the first, like from the 70s and the 80s, it was kind of Wild West in China, and the Chinese just threw out prices, and then the factories, I mean the brands in the US just said, well, with that price, we can make our margins 500, 600%. They didn't care what the FOB price was. But as times changed and margins got squeezed from 600 to 500 to 400, and then these corporations were like, they weren't meeting their end of the year annual profit targets. So then they needed to increase their margins. Well, they couldn't increase on the upside. Mm-hmm. So they had to then they started going to the Chinese and started dissecting everything with a fine-tooth comb, and told the Chinese, you do open costing and you show us where we can save a few cents here, a few cents there, and don't overcharge us on electricity, and you know, deal with your local government to reduce whatever those costs are that you have to pay under the table, and just get the price where it needs to be. And the Chinese did it. You know, they took the time to do introspection into their own price and break it down to minute detail. Vietnam is just getting there now. Like the factory that you're working at, it's a foreign direct invested factory, so they have years of experience of doing this, so they do it. But
Oh yeah, they have it calculated down to the second in terms of productivity. They have this all graphed out.
yeah. But that's a foreign directed invested factory. A Vietnamese factory that's just kind of going cowboy style. They haven't been asked to do it yet, but now that's where we're at, because just in general, the Vietnam price is 10 to 30% higher than China, and most people are shocked when they come here.
On labor or just the overall FOB price?
Overall.
Just overall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, certainly this is the most expensive source I've worked with. That's also because I'm giving them my most complicated projects. I'm not even giving USA that because USA, I mean, they just lack most of the machinery, to be honest. I know that the process is in place here for down insulated pieces, Gore-Tex shells, that sort of thing.